Hi. Oh, hold on. Let me get you off. Hello. How you doing?
Doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I apologize. I forgot about the time zone. I forgot like America
No worries.
is huge, and that you're in Texas. I'm like, of course. Um,
No
but how
problem
are
at
you doing
all.
today?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. Just, taking it one day at a time. There's always something crazy going on. So, um, it is what it is,
Like a pandemic?
basically.
Yeah, I work at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center,
Oh, cool.
and I work in infectious diseases research.
Oh, wow.
So right now
Okay.
I am like the
The
busiest I've
old
ever
man on
been, and everyone else is chilling out.
campus. Everybody wants your number.
Unfortunately, and I'm not even a doctor. And I'm like, what in the world? So luckily I was able to sneak out today and come talk to you. I'm
Gotcha.
very excited.
Yeah, yeah. Same here. Same here. I'm glad we get a chance to do this.
Right. Thanks for talking with me.
No
You're
problem.
like a big wig, so I'm just like,
I
I'm
don't
just
know about all that.
honored.
I don't know about all that. I'm just trying my best to make sure that Upswing's still alive tomorrow.
Well, yeah, that's the work of a CEO. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that today. But I really just wanted to I saw you on Google Startups,
Oh, cool.
and I was like, wait. Hold on. There is a lot going on with this pandemic, but I had no idea there were so many successful startups that Google wanted to fund. So I was like, oh crap, let's at least write down these people. And so I contacted you, and thankfully you responded. So thank you so much for being responsive and prompt.
Yeah, yeah, no problem at all. No problem at all. Thanks for reaching out. I
What
really
was that
appreciate the
experience
word.
like with Google?
It was a really good experience. It was I had no idea what to expect. We were actually the inaugural cohort. So, we were all kind of going through it for the first time to kind of, see what the experience was going to be like. But they were definitely really helpful. They were really open to our questions and feedback, and thoughts about how things could be improved, and very flexible. We got a mentor. Like, we each were assigned a mentor when we first got started, so that was really helpful in just making sure that we were getting the most out of the Google experience possible. um, and then, yeah, it's Google, of course, so
Right.
having the name helped a lot in terms of just generating just awareness of Upswing, publicity, like the things, like really trying to share with people the things that we were doing. Just started to get out there more and more. So it's been an exciting time.
Was it like a boot camp? Did they have you like out in the mud or something? Or
It was a virtual boot camp. So if they could have us in the mud, they probably would. But
right.
but
Wow.
no, we there were a ton of different workshops and classes, and what was really cool was that it wasn't just, oh, we're going to talk to the CEO and then that's pretty much it, and you have to figure out how to decipher it for all your staff. Instead, they had a section for marketing, so I could bring like our marketing folks in. They had a section for the engineering team, so our entire engineering team was on some of those, for product, for sales, for customer service or customer success. So it was really helpful in just aligning our entire organization around thinking differently, and strategically about where we want to go and how we get there.
Wow. I had no idea it was that involved. But I guess that is the work that you do. It's quite nuanced. It's
Yeah.
quite heavy, important work, and I'm glad you got the opportunity because yeah, these large corporations, they have a lot of reputations. A
Right.
lot of different kinds of people have all kinds of positions about them. But at the end of the day, when there is this like corporate goodness or corporate I don't know, goodwill or something that they have to sow or intentionally sow out here in the world. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
really cool. I'm really
Yeah.
glad you went through that.
Yeah, same here. Same here. It was. like I said, definitely a rewarding experience. I'm like so glad that I was chosen to be a part of that, and our team is as well. And even after the demo day ended, they were still telling us, "Hey, look, we want to be there for you. So any way that we can help provide any sort of support, just let us know." So I'm definitely going to be taking them up on that.
Right. Good. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have sustainable. Yeah, the sustainability part, because there's like a lot of stuff about um I remember seeing, and sorry, I'm kind of going off track, sorry, but I remember
No,
seeing
you're good.
specifically about venture capitalism, like in the last year, about how like venture capitalists, like you always have to they nearly ever fund black people, and they don't ever fund women. And it's
Mhm.
like venture capitalism is like this like insulated thing. So I'm glad
Yeah,
you're able to get other kinds of funding, because I know it can be hard out here for people of color, especially
yeah,
black men.
yeah, for sure. I think less than 1% of all VC funded startups are black or brown founded. So it's the numbers are definitely, and it's not just about us. It's about the ideas, right? So um, when I tend to kind of share with people about the show Shark Tank, right? And how you'll see, say, a woman who's standing in front of the sharks and is pitching some idea that's for women. And what will tend to happen is that a lot of the guys will say, well, I don't really know much about like this product or this market, so I'm out, right? And what they don't recognize, what they don't realize, is that if enough people who look like them say that, then those ideas that help an entire community and that could generate a whole wealth of funding get shut out as well. And so that's basically what tends to happen in the VC world, is that there are fewer products designed for minorities. There are fewer products designed for women because there are fewer VCs that are willing to put money behind it. And so, that cycle certainly needs to change if we're going to, be able to see, more innovation out there. If they want to make more money, by the way, because there are these hidden, like untapped markets that just, need that funding in order to be realized.
Right. And I'm very lucky. I don't know how I did, but the reason why I shifted gears my podcast to talking about business was because I met a black venture capitalist, but he was Canadian. Um and so, his perspective of like all of how what is going on, if you don't if you're not from America or had like that exact experience, it's hard to contextualize like race
Yeah,
in other places. It's because it's like ours is so crazy. The way we talk about and deal with race and white supremacy and all that kind of stuff is vastly different than a lot of other people do. Um,
yeah,
and we don't
yeah.
even and we talk, it's ingrained in us. But it's very interesting. But I was intrigued that there are these pockets of people that have found success. And I find
Yeah.
it very interesting because I know I work at the College of Medicine at the University of Cincinnati, in addition
Uh,
to having, my own aspirations. So I work in public health. Um,
okay.
but I also am a podcast producer, social media content creator, and all of that stuff, blogger.
Jack of
Um,
all trades.
say that again. I'm sorry.
I just said jack of all trades.
I try to, but it's more so just the energy, like a high energy kind of thing. Like I've always been curious, even as a kid. And I recognize that in other people as well, especially in these people that are able to found these businesses against all odds. Like no one even wants to fund you, and like you're still doing it and you are not discouraged at all. So and you may be discouraged, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. It was like kind of that transformation. I asked about you out here in these streets, and you have a lot of good, solid information about Upswing itself. But I kind of wanted to talk about Melvin Hines. I want to know about you because you would put little things in your interviews about your family and stuff, and I'm like, I want to know more about that stuff. But every single person on this planet experiences life in their own way,
Yeah.
and I'm really big on trying to figure out the energetic purpose of why we do things.
Mhm.
So to kind of get started on the even though we've been talking already, but to kind of start on the questions that I have for you specifically,
Yeah.
um, can you kind of give a little bit about where you come from and kind of how you started on this path?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from a small town in South Georgia called Albany. It's about maybe 100,000 people. It My parents were actually in the military, so we traveled around a pretty good bit. And when my dad, so we were actually stationed down in Albany, Georgia, during like the Desert Storm period, and so that's basically how we ended up there. My dad was gone at that point in time to to prepare for the war that never happened, and which was fortunate. And then he came back, and both my mom and dad still worked for the military base in Albany as civilians. And so that's kind of my earliest sort of memories of going to Albany and um, really being a part of a community that was vastly different from what I had known earlier in life, kind of growing up. You're talking about just how race plays a part in so many different things. I think that was one of those times when it really kind of shone through even more. Um, being in some of the my earlier schools when there was just a lot of tensions between whites and blacks and things like that, and so that definitely was a pretty interesting time period. I eventually ended up going to some of the like more metro Albany schools. And it was during that time period where you could really begin to see some of the bigger differences in terms of just what opportunities were there for various students. I had 250 students in my freshman class, and by the time graduation came around, there were only 68 of us left. Um, a lot of
Wait,
students.
hold on. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Who was the guidance counselor or the principals? Like, what in the world? You said that your parents were like military parents and stuff like that, so you had a very strict childhood.
Oh,
Is
for
that
sure.
right?
For sure. Yeah. You know,
Like school and everything, like church and everything, like how strict?
pretty strict, like definitely everything, from like chores to, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, all that sort of stuff. We definitely were, at church like every Sunday and Wednesday. We were pretty much like your, the what you would expect the family in South Georgia to be.
Right, right. And so do you think that is what kept you in school? Because out of that's like 100% failure rate in my mind. I'm like, that's
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. My parents were very adamant that they wanted it. It was crazy. It was almost like they were able to kind of see past what was in front of us a lot of times. Um, they were very adamant that they wanted a lawyer and a doctor. So they were. I ended up going to law school. My brother ended up going to. He's actually up in New York, going to medical school right now. So they were, that was very important to them, was to see those kind of things happen for their children. And by the way, they fought really hard to make sure that those things were happening. So it wasn't just about how they raised us, but how they conditioned themselves as well. Both of my parents were what's defined as non-traditional students. My mom would travel back and forth. It's about 45. Oops, sorry about that. It was about a 45-minute drive to the local kind of university called Georgia Southwestern State University. She would go there just time and time again in order to, improve her educational standing. my dad would drive down to Valdosta State University, which was probably about an hour and a half away, to do the same. And this was all while they were both raising us. So they were, they were really, I'd say, strict with themselves as well about how they wanted to see us succeed, by example. And yeah, that's definitely permeated through.
So you're not a doctor. Are you a lawyer, like a licensed lawyer?
No, I that was where that was where I think I started kind of diverging from some of the ideas that they had. I went to Duke University for law school. And my first year, and I kind of had this, I think, very idealistic um, vision for just what the law could produce and things like that. Um, and then I went to do a summer internship, and I think all of all of that idealism kind of came crashing down a little bit. So I decided that I would instead pursue the JD MBA program, and found myself in business school where just the opportunities for success and things like that were, it was just really eye opening. Never really thought about how you could use business and economics um, to improve the state of people's lives and things of that nature. So that's kind of where everything kicked off for me, with like entrepreneurship, with the idea of what can you do to level the playing field with education and all that great stuff, and really started me off on my pursuits.
Well, that's great. What was the experience like then choosing to do a startup? Because that's kind of like a very risky, out of all the careers. I feel like that's one of the more riskier choices.
Yeah, it's definitely risky for sure. I did a lot of things that I would not recommend everyone else to do in order to keep Upswing moving. Um, I would say, in those earliest days, so I graduated when I was around 27. Hadn't really worked full time yet, and so other than having the opportunity to teach at part time at a local HBCU there called North Carolina Central University, and I was working in the consulting field for a little while, for about a year, and doing that on the side, and was really, even though I was enjoying like money for the first time, which was pretty awesome, was really thinking that, man, my heart's still kind of pulling me over to this idea of education and equality. Like thinking back to the people I went to school with, those 68 out of 250, and how can we really make better and bigger changes there? And so after hearing some of the conversations that were happening between myself and some of the students that I was teaching over and over again, they weren't academic in nature. A lot of them were, how did you decide what career you wanted to do, like what school, what major? I began to notice, man, a lot of times like these types of students, first generation students, et cetera, are um, also struggling to have mentors and guidance and things like that to kind of help them navigate. And it'd be great if there was a way to make this a lot easier for them. And so that was really the idea, like the earliest idea for Upswing, was to pull that together in a way where students could connect in with, people who are working in engineering or working in tech, and can, begin to have those connections and think about where they want to do next. Um, and so, yeah, that was really the first fruits of Upswing. We started it in 2013 and have just been rolling ever since, basically.
Good. So you said that you made a lot of choices that you wouldn't recommend other people make. Did you also get a lot of criticism in these last, I guess, 7 or 8 years?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, so
How would you say you rose above it?
um, that is a good question. I would say the hardest thing So the hardest thing about getting started was I think what society kind of puts on you in terms of like what success looks like. And so success looks like taking home a bigger and bigger check. Um, and and really, who cares like what happens like outside of the everything else, just as long as you're taking home larger and larger checks. And for me, I don't know, it didn't feel right. I mean, after a certain while, it's just like, okay, like what am I doing that's like contributing to society? So I remember when I was telling my parents that I was going to, quit this job that was paying really well, and it was kind of the culmination of all this schooling that I had done to start a startup. It did not go over very well at all.
Right.
um, and so it did feel very lonely for a while there. Like, there wasn't really that network at that point in time, like there is now for a lot of entrepreneurs. And even though everyone had kind of heard about some of the biggest guys like out west, I mean, we were in North Carolina. It was still a kind of a small, burgeoning kind of thing. Um, so I think that a big part for me was just recognizing that, look, at this time I'm basically about 28. If things don't work out well, like I can probably, go and maybe beg for my job back or look for a job somewhere else. It won't be the end of the world, but at least I tried. That was kind of what I was thinking. And actually, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to give this 6 months, right? I had like set aside money for 6 months. I'd saved that much money. And so let's see what happens. And I was very naive. It takes way more than 6 months to know if things are going to work or not.
Right.
But that was kind of how I kept doing it. Was just like, I'm just going to do this 6 months at a time. And I'm naturally, I would say, a very, I wouldn't call it pessimistic, but like realistic kind of person. So I wasn't thinking, okay, I knew the stats, that less than 1% of startups are VC funded, that like very few like minorities are founders. So, to me, it was just, I'm going to just put my all into this, like work as hard as I can for this time period. And if it doesn't work out, at least I got it out my system. At least I tried, that kind of thing. And turns out that, 6 months in, it looked like there was hope. So let's do it another 6 months. 6 months in, it still seemed like there was some hope. So we just kept going. And now it's been, 7 years.
Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh. That's a great success story because it does get lonely. And
Oh, yeah.
especially when everyone's like, you gotta be great, you gotta be great. And you're like,
Mhm.
but there's reality.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
you've been successful.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that we probably, as entrepreneurs, finally feel successful when, when the company is like been acquired or IPO'd. Then we're like, okay, we've been successful. Like, until then, we're just trying to, not be that statistic.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you have any advice or anything or anything that you could share in terms of what you would tell your younger self that you wish you had known?
That's a good question. I think the first thing I would tell my younger self is to save more money. That would have made things a lot less stressful. Um, Even if that meant having to, work part time or work full time and do this part on the side or at night for a little bit longer than I would have liked. Um, that would be the first thing. The second thing I think I would have told myself is to probably just to just keep just believing and trusting that this is the right path. Um, you know, keep the faith is really important. There were lots of times when it kind of felt like my faith was being tested for sure. That would definitely be there. And then there would probably be a lot of smaller tactical things I would tell myself about how to handle specific situations.
Like staffing or like what do you mean?
Yeah, staffing, investing, you know, handling different just like crises and things like that. I think that there's a lot that people I think over index on when it comes to what makes a successful company, and then there's a lot that they under index on. So I think a lot of people tend to. You're going to say something?
No, I was just saying, oh, like, oh yeah, that's very interesting. I've never heard anybody kind of mention it or speak on it in those terms.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people over-index on the startup itself, the idea. Is this a great idea? Is this not a great idea? I think there's a ton of really great ideas that are out there. What they under-index on is the team and what makes a successful team. Um, it's really interesting because it goes back to, I think, some of the interesting ideas around minorities being funded at less higher rates. Because if I had money and I was looking to invest in a startup, I would focus on team way more than product. Every one of my dollars would go to the team, not the product. Because if you have the right team in place, they'll figure it out. They might have to pivot a couple times, but they'll definitely figure it out. We were actually in this accelerator, and there were people. I remember walking that first day, and there were just the most amazing of ideas. I mean, crazy off the wall ideas, and they were accomplishing them. And we were just like, oh man, we're just like nobody's compared to everyone else. We're just trying to do this little small education thing. And I remember it was my team and then another team that would just be there late at night and early in the morning, just all the time. And by the end of that cohort, we were the two that were ranked the highest. And to this day, we're the two that are the only ones that still exist. Um, it's really about that team. That's what matters the most. And for minorities, you know, for a lot of minorities, I can't speak to all minorities, but for a lot of minorities, there are certain challenges that you've had to overcome in life that makes you, I think, especially kind of Teflon to some of the challenges that are going to happen in the startup world. Um, and when those challenges occur, like sometimes you have to be irrationally resilient. Like there will be the offer to go back into the corporate world and make X amount of money, and it's a very rational decision to do so. Like no one can hate you for making that decision, and yet you have to somehow find a way to stick it out and continue going down that route. And there's a lot of other people who during the first like bump in the road or hurdle with the founder, or term sheet that falls through, something like that, product that fails miserably, that like it's just like I'm done, and then that's it, because they haven't really had to deal with like life challenges. And so even when we're hiring for my team internally, that's one of the questions that I ask. Like I want to find out, what are some of the things that like folks have been through? What are some of the challenges they've had to go through in their lives? Maybe it's something that was medical. Maybe it's something that is due to discrimination or due to poverty. Like I want to hear their resilience, hear their story of overcoming, because those are the people who I want on my team. And so that's one of the things I think that a lot of investors, a lot of VCs just tend to under index on.
Wow, that's actually, yeah, because I've only seen virtual, or not virtual, but fictional TV versions of venture capital things, and they always dramatize the people. But I just always thought that was just for the sake of the show. But hearing you talk about it, it seems like it does make a difference when you're all living together in one house, eating burritos or in a garage or something.
Yep.
The camaraderie makes all the difference.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to find a way to keep that, right, even during the hardest times. It's really easy for everyone to be, friendly and great with each other when when everything's going well and money's flowing.
Google's there, right?
And Google's there, yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's not as helpful during those really difficult times when you really have no idea where the next payroll run's going to come from. Like that's when it really does test everyone, test all the founders, test the commitment of the team. And seeing my team kind of go through that fire and come out on the other side, I mean, that means the world to me.
Wow. So I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're a CEO. But so I heard you liked Outcast. Is that
I love
right?
that. Yep.
Yeah. Who is your favorite? You like Big Boy or Andre 3000? Who's your favorite?
It depends on how I'm feeling that day. So,
Okay.
if, if it's a all right, like let's like make this workout happen kind of thing, then it's Big Boy. If it's more of like a all right, I want to kind of be in my feelings a little bit, then it might be Andre.
All right. Oh, well that's awesome. I think at the end of the day you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And music, I'd say music is the music of the universe or the language of the universe. So
Oh yeah.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy.
For
I was happy to hear that. I was like, oh yeah, we have something in common. Yeah.
sure.
All
Oh
right.
yeah.
Well, those are all the questions that I have. I really appreciate
Oh
you talking with me and taking some time to start early and my
yeah.
ridiculous time zone mishap here.
No, no worries at all. No worries at all.
But
It
I
was
appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. This was really great. I'm glad to get a chance to connect with you, and hey, keep up the great work. I really think that this is just a great and well needed podcast, and also just I know that this time period here must be just so difficult for you and just everyone else who's trying to make sure that the rest of us stay safe. So
It's
definitely kudos to
frustrating.
you for.
It's very frustrating, but it's fine. It's fine. But I work on behalf of the public's health. So the public's health is my health.
Yeah.
So yeah, so at the end of the day, that is kind of I can even be cynical and still have a purpose. So I'm very I'm very happy. Well, thank you again. And what are you going to do today?
More
All
work,
right.
nonstop.
All right. Well, I hope you have a great day and thanks again.
Thanks,
And
you too.
I will talk to you later.
Sounds great. Take care.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.